Hey everyone, it's Carl, and I listen to podcasts and I watch YouTube channels and I read blogs all the time to try to get better at being a GM. And you probably do as well. I even give advice, right? But I find that some of the conventional wisdom goes against maybe how I play the game. And we all know that if you're having fun, you're doing it right. There's no right way of playing the game. So I just thought I'd share some of the things I do that might be a little bit different than traditional. Bad roll. Then it's time to go. There's a glint in the DM's eye. It's time to save it. Tabletop Tango, look at the bubbles, do the stuff, really would appreciate it. But let's talk about what I want to talk about. So I'm doing a new campaign, and as I'm getting into that and I'm getting ready for what I want to do, I thought about how I run the game. When I'm filming this, it's kind of the end of the year, and so, obviously you want to be, get introspective and try to think about how you do things. And so I thought about all the cool material out there that I've learned from, and then realized that some of the stuff I don't do. Some of the conventional wisdom I just throw out the window. I don't care, or I do it different. Again, as long as I'm having fun, that's the important part. So let's talk about some of that. So the first one is metagaming. Everybody talks about how metagaming is a problem. Players aren't immersed. They're making decisions. Their player's doing something that their player character wouldn't know. Okay, all valid things if that's kind of the way your group is kind of leaning. Me, I actually don't care. Metagaming, oh well. I play Savage Worlds. It's built into the system. You've got a Benny. Other systems have things that you can spend outside of the game to drive different roles, and that's all about player knowledge versus character knowledge. The player knows that that character is about to get whacked, so they're going to throw a Benny to make another roll. That's okay. I even don't mind so much. I really don't mind if the players are interacting with each other during a combat or having some talk. Some people are very much, hey, it's a 6-second round. You've got to go fast, and they can only say one thing. Doesn't matter? No, they're playing a game. In the heat of combat, if it was real world where you're really together, yeah, you're making quick statements, but you guys came in with probably a plan. You already understand each other, your fighting styles, all those sorts of things. And so it's not all that big of a deal to have somebody who's a good tactician, who's playing the tactician, who's maybe he's got a bunch of those edges. They're supposed to be inspiring other people. Yeah, why can't they talk? Why can't they say, hey, you know what? We have better ideas, go do this. Hey, you do have this spell. Why don't you think about using that? A person who lived in that area like you've got experience. Yeah, that would come naturally to you. For a player, it's a character sheet. It's a list of stuff. And you don't have it nearly as internalized. And so maybe you forget. Okay. So let's use player knowledge to help drive that part. Stories also can be used outside of or in the metagaming world. And so one of the great examples that I've heard before is notice checks, right? How many times are you rolling a notice check, and when somebody rolls it, you go, something happened, didn't happen. They don't know why they're rolling a notice check. You're literally just say, do a notice check. What about not doing that? Tell them what the results are. Tell them what the consequences are of missing it. So let's say they're walking down a street, and there's some thugs hiding behind a building, and you're going to have them roll notice. Is it a problem to tell them that, hey, there's thugs who are about to attack you, roll notice to see if you see them before they attack you, or are you going to be surprised? That's meta knowledge that the player has, character doesn't, but it lets the player make decisions on what they're going to do. Maybe they want to spend some bennies to roll that higher because they know that they're going against the stealth of the other of the bandits. If you don't do that, well, then you're back to sort of basic success. Hey, roll a notice roll, but you don't know what's going on, so you got to guess whether you want to spend a Benny or not to overcome that consequence. So why not? Why worry about metagaming that much? I don't. I also, related to that, I don't do a lot of sidebars. Now, I don't think that's controversial. I think there's a lot of people like that, so maybe that's not perfect for this scenario, but I don't do sidebars. So the classic old school game where the rogue's going to walk down the hallway and the game master, DM, sits aside and whispers to him. It's like, okay, what you see is this and what you see is that, and this is what you're going to do. And then he comes back and he may decide to tell the party or not tell the party. then you run into this. Basically what happens is you go off, thief does his thing, thief comes back, and immediately the fighter goes, well, I'm going to search the thief. Okay, you're going to do it anyway, so why did we bother spending all that time in a sidebar where everyone else is twiddling their thumbs? Why not just keep it all on the open? Let the players play their characters, and if they're bad role players, okay, so be it. Hopefully everybody's still having fun. So let them hear what's going on, have all the information, recommend, push them to use only what they know to have their character react. I still do a lot of rulings over rules, which is a very old school thing. In OSR, you have a lot of very minimal skills and you don't have things like that. So I like to keep, understand my mechanics really well. And in Savage Worlds, it's real simple, right? Got to get over a 4. You got some pluses, you got some minuses. You roll the die type based on the skill, and off you go. Cool thing in Savage Worlds is they don't go crazy with skills. And sometimes people complain about that. They go, hey, the skills aren't granular enough. You've got fighting. But what about fighting with a sword versus fighting with this versus fighting with that? Or shooting, a rifle's different than a bow and arrow. Okay, fair enough. Got it. If you want to have realism, okay, make those 5 skills all different in your setting that you're writing. But what's really nice is that since you only have a few skills and they're kind of bundled together, it makes it really, really easy to focus on rulings. I need to do something. It's not something that's really expected. I don't have a rule for it. All right, give me an athletics check. Yeah, that's close enough to an electronics skill. Okay, let's just use electronics. Or, hey, give me the lesser of electronics and repair, just because we're going to, you're going to try to do something that I don't have a rule for or whatever. So that I think is important. And I think a lot of modern games, modern traditional versus sort of the story games, there's more and more push for more skills. The skills are very granular. I played Interface 0, great setting, but we use skill specialization, and that was like, why did I do that? Is this notice visual, audio, something else? Oh my God. Learned my lesson. Keep it simple, drive the rulings, have a really good simple mechanic. Dungeons & Dragons, really simple mechanic. You can use that for a lot of stuff without wasting time trying to come up with something unique. I'm also not a stickler to characters being right. I'm really super open to, what players want to do, their concepts. I'm cool with it, right? In D&D, you've got, sometimes you got a problem where there's so many classes, so many races, or I should say ancestries, so many things that you can pick from, and people try to optimize by knowing I got this skill tree or I got this edge tree or whatever, and I need to, or feat tree, I guess, but I need to pull all this together and do this, and then the game master's looking and go, well, you used the Splat book. You shouldn't have used that book because it's not part of my. Literally, nice thing about Savage Worlds is, or if you're playing straight Dungeons and Dragons, is you've got your core book, and then you might have a settings book, and that kind of defines that frame around it. But overall, I still don't care. If you are playing Cyberpunk and you really want to be some weird guy who has double mono whips, talking to you, Eric, and rides a motorcycle and does tricks and all that kind of stuff, and that really is what makes him exciting. I'm not going to say, well, am I, in this world, they really don't have motorcycles, and, that's a riding, or is that, no, I don't care. Play what you want, enjoy it. If it's trying to break my game, again, Savage World's harder to min-max in. You can optimize. If it's really going to break my game, I'm the game master. I can put things in place that affect you, even though you think you're optimized for everything. It's my world, right? If you are super motorcycle guy and I don't really like that, I shouldn't say that, but that's something I feel doesn't balance as well, or I can do something to balance against super motorcycle rider and do something else. Lots of stuff you can do. Maybe that's a bad example. Yeah, I don't care. So don't care what your class is, generally. Not a big deal. I like to I don't know if this is different, but I really like to go with what the players throw at me. I don't get bent out of shape if I've got this super cool encounter and it's going to be awesome, and the players just they don't go after it. They don't really care. I can set that aside, and maybe that comes back later. Maybe it's not important. Maybe it's, oh well, I prepped some time on it. Big deal. Goes back to why I like low prep GMing, because again, best laid plans may go out the window. And so maybe in Dungeons and Dragons or other games, you have to spend more time prepping because you got big stat blocks and everything. But and I'll probably put a link up. But in Savage Worlds, much easier to do low prep, pull things together on the fly, and get ready for anything the players throw at me. I talked about my campaign where there are gods, which is where they're emerging gods, and I had the scenario walk through. Here's what's going to happen. Here's this arc that I have an idea. I mean, yeah, I don't, railroad people through the arc. I think this is the point I'm trying to make. Is, boy, they took left turns after right turns. It went from these other gods trying to take over the city to, well, yeah, there's other gods, but now there's a military faction that they're kind of spending some time because they made this connection that I didn't think about them making, but it was fine. Let's go and run with it. I'm okay with it because I don't spend 20 hours prepping. So why do I care? And I'm not a big fan of the Quantum Ogre. So if you don't know what Quantum Ogre is, that's where basically the encounter is going to be wherever it has to be. So if the players are in a dungeon, classic description, and they go right, and the ogre is supposed to be to the left, suddenly the ogre's on the right. So it really didn't matter which way the player characters went. You made sure that they hit that encounter you wanted to be. So Quantum Ogre is, you don't know exactly where it is until the players make a decision. So I guess that's where it comes. I don't care for that. If you never run into my ogre, you're going to have something else happen. And there's going to be a consequence to that, right? So maybe the ogre never is there, but something happens off screen with the ogre because you haven't ran into it, and they learn that that ogre was there. Fine. Or they never learn. It doesn't matter. So another thing, which is kind of maybe people talk about immersion, and they don't like when you have to stop and do rules or look up rules because it breaks immersion. And I'm a big fan of, if you know something's going to happen in a game, look up the rules. So in Savage Worlds, if I'm going to do a dramatic task, let me review that. Chase, oh my God. Always have to review chase before I do a chase because it takes a while for me to remember that. So that makes sense. You should do that. But in the end of the day, if you're playing and you're having a good time and things are happening, there's always an opportunity to kind of step back if it's a big deal to check the rule. I talked about rulings over rules. I am more than happy to just make a ruling and roll the dice and go forward. But if it's something important and we don't understand it and it can make a huge difference, I don't care if we stop. I have players who know the rules really well, and I'm okay with them telling me what the rule's going to be. So rules lawyers, okay, obviously to a point, if they have to accept that I may make some rulings, but I'm okay with it. I know it breaks immersion a little bit maybe, but a lot of stuff you're doing. When you roll dice, you're breaking immersion. When you're saying, hey, I got to take a 10-minute break because I got to go to the bathroom, you're breaking immersion, is what it is. So kind of the last thing is, like I said, you're about to have a fun game, and it's about having fun. And so I don't get hung up on tone. So again, if you're playing a Cthulhu game or a very dark D&D game or dark cyberpunk game, you want to have that dark feeling of the game. I get it. It makes total sense. You want that. For me, I don't worry so much. If the players take me in a direction, and it's the direction they want to take, okay, I'm with you. I'll go ahead and I'll follow you wherever you want to go. And if the tone, if there's some dark comedy in this Cthulhu type game and they're enjoying cracking up, and, it's just like those war movies, right? The guys are sitting in the trench, they're having a good time in the sense of making jokes, dark humor, interacting, doing crazy stuff. in the end of the day, they're still in war. They still could die. They still have that feeling, and that part of the reason they're trying to do that is to keep their brain separate from that. Why not let the players do that too? You know, that tension is great. I'll admit, I play mostly sci-fi, cyberpunk, occasionally kind of a post-apocalypse, but on a rise kind of game. I don't do a lot of zombie stuff. So you can take it with a grain of salt. A lot of the genres I play, having some humor mixed in, it's okay. It doesn't hurt anything. But I don't get worried so much about that. If somebody wants to be kind of gonzo and someone else is serious, okay. But all this comes back to a conversation with the players. So if you've got a group and you've got super serious people, can't lose immersion, they're never going to speak out of character, and you have folks who kind of metagame a little bit, they like to speak out of character, maybe they don't feel like comfortable role-playing, you got to figure out a way to kind of tie these folks together and make them a cohesive unit. It's not all your job, but it's something that you can help and facilitate to help get the players working together. And you setting the tone, I don't mean the game tone, but you setting in a session 0, here's how I do things, and here's where I'm different, or here's where I'm the same, here's my expectations. That helps everybody be on the same page. I'm just telling you some of the things that don't bother me, I'm okay with. Again, not going to get bent out of shape on metagaming or the tone, or you're not creating a character quite the way I wanted you to create a character. Obviously, it's your character, right? So all that kind of stuff. And I think that'll be important when I get my next campaign going to, you know, understand it about myself and embrace it, or maybe to, you know, take some of that input from other podcasts and YouTube channels, and maybe I should change. I don't know. In the comments, tell me what you think. What are some of the things that you go against conventional wisdom, or things that you go, hey, dude, if you don't do that, you really are, you know, you're not thinking right. It's okay. But if you're having fun, you're doing it right. And I stole that from somebody. I think the RPG Academy. I don't know. But anyway, I'm Carl with Tabletop Tango. I appreciate that you watched. Kind of a longer one, but just some thoughts. We'll talk to you later. Take it easy. One more bad roll, then it's time to go. There's a glint in the DM's eye. It's time to save a die.